A reading from the Gospel of Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said to him, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. In today's gospel, I realize that I may risk repeating myself and using similar points from previous reflections, so instead I'm going to do a quick review of 2 points. First, in the first century, there really was no such thing as a poor person who does miracles. Although miracle workers were a dime a dozen in the ancient world, it was unheard of for there to be a poor miracle worker. It was by its very definition a contradiction in terms. Being poor means being born in sin. Doing miracles meant you were blessed by God, implying that you had not sinned. So being a poor miracle worker somehow meant that you were both cursed by God on account of family sin, as well as being blessed by God for doing miracles, which meant that he really wouldn't have sinned. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be a sinner and not a sinner at the same time. As a result, it gave Jesus a lot of notoriety simply because he at least appeared to be a contradiction in terms. And at best, he redefined how a person's status as rich or poor had nothing to do with sin at all. You really could be poor and not sin against God. Second, note the continued theme of the people who can't see or hear as the ones who know who Jesus is. The ones who supposedly are closest to God, like the Sadducees and Pharisees, and as such should be able to hear clearest, are actually the ones who are blind and deaf to Jesus. They can't see who he really is because their religious presumptions cloud their judgment, resulting in them not being able to hear what he had to say. In other words, it was the have-nots who understand who Jesus is, and the haves who don't understand who Jesus is. So applying these 2 points, first we can infer how, just as Jesus was judged for his poor upbringing and how he shouldn't have been able to do miracles, we too can be judged by others because we don't have the biggest house, the shiniest car, or even the most fashionable clothes. Even though this might sound a bit cliche, people often define us by our status and how much money we may or may not have. It can cloud other people's judgment, just as how people prejudged Jesus as having sinned against God and as corresponding punishment of being born into a poor upbringing. Second, we can see how people misjudge us because of where we come from and how they can't see who we really are as a result. Yet, even though this might cause us suffering and pain, we can take comfort in knowing that Jesus knows exactly what we are going through.